So last time when we left off, we were talking about the minimally viable product. And what it comes down to is you pick a set of product features and you have a theory of what your customer wants and what they don't want. And so you get your product out there and you learn from them what it is they like and what they don't like. And the big advantage of using an MVP process is that you get your product out as cheaply as possible. And if things don't work out well, you can always pivot, meaning go in a new direction. And this is very, very common with startups. You find out you really thought that this is going to be the market, and you find out it's somebody else. So in terms of the MVP approach, you can get to cash faster. You have to be careful about grading on your customers, meaning if you release your product too early and it doesn't work, a lot of people don't give you a second chance. The other big issue is this entire approach is part of what's called the Lean Sigma. And in the Lean Sigma, they just keep saying, keep pivoting, pivoting, pivoting. You can pivot forever. And that's not true. With software, you can get away with a lot because making a change, you're just rewriting code. You're just pushing electrons around. But in physical product, there's a cost to building every one of those. And so eventually you just run out of cash. So yes, you can pivot, but there's a limit into how long you can pivot. In terms of the MVP, what do you want? You want simple, clean products. You want a long-term sales. And the thing is, if your product is too minimal, that's going to be hard to do. You want your products with depth. And that's it. People aren't going to get bored with your products. You want to test, but at some point you just have to get your product out there. Too much testing can get really expensive. But what it comes down to is you want a flexible mentality. You want to be agile. And you get that through your customer testing and pivoting. Now, how do we sum it all up? Well, for a startup, your lifeblood is cash. And so that's why you have to be careful, because you don't want to waste all your cash in development. And a lot of startups fail because they can't balance their spending with all the things that they have to do. And so this is why you have the rationale of putting together a minimal product and see what the market actually likes. So the next part of our journey is, now that we've been able to segment and target specific markets, it's about positioning. And positioning, now people think positioning is like, well, I'll set up my restaurant down the street from my competition or something like that. No, that's not positioning. Positioning is based on the features or feeling about your product. How do you set up your product relative to them? So we're going to talk about what is positioning, mapping, and how do you align to the opportunity. And so this is the image and offering that you have in your customer's mind. This is closely related to branding. And so that you have a distinct place. For example, if I ask you, think of cool gadgets, what's the first thing that pops in your mind? Well, probably Apple. You have to decide how you want to position your product. And it's about the car, the driver, or the race. Meaning, is your product about technology? Is your product about you as a competitor, the company itself? Or is it about the market? And there are one of two approaches that you can go about doing that. That's either top down or bottoms up. Top down is, this is what my product is, now I got to figure out where its place is in the universe. The second approach is, let's see what people value, and then let's make something to go in that space that they really want. So that's always been the conundrum about product development. What it is kind of like the same of if you own a sports team, for example, or a manager of one. Do you set up a system to get the most out of your players, or do you get the players to fit a system? And that's the difference between top down and bottoms up. So the question is what's better? The thing about bottoms up is it's a market pull, meaning it's something that the market wants. The other is a market push. You're going to put it out there in the market and see what people want. Does push ever work? Yes, it does. For example, food products, drugs, medicine. There's something that people always want, and so therefore that's where a push works. On the other hand, if you have something exotic, that's where you're going to need pull. In terms of differentiation, this is the first step and the first thing you have to do. You have to make your product unique. If your product's not unique, you are a commodity. And so here are the things that companies typically differentiate themselves on. So a positioning statement is, and you can just read this, but an example is, to customers who like to sell their wares, Craigslist allows local selling without the hassle of shipping and packing that auction websites offer. So that tells me, from the customer's point of view, why I'm unique. In terms of formulating a positioning strategy, it's, first of all, you think about what positions are going to offer the most value, which are taken and which are open. That's basically, how do I want to deal with competition? How can I create my opportunity through differentiation? And which of these positions that I take aligns best with the company? And so what it comes down to is the positions that I take, meaning the attributes, like I'm the fastest computer, or I'm the most stylish car. Those are the attributes and factors. And what customers will tell you is what they like, which is a preference. The thing is, a preference doesn't mean they're going to choose you. So when you look at going from an attribute to a preference, your proposal has to align to the customer's value. Is it a good fit? And then going from a preference to choice, it's probability. Based on the fact that they choose you, what's the chance are they're actually going to go out and make a purchase? And this is what's called the hierarchy of effects. Anytime you have a series, one step depends on another step, you have a hierarchy. Here are some different positioning strategies. You might just want to compare yourself to a competitor. Who does that? ASU. If you notice, ASU says we're the #1 school in innovation, #2 is Stanford, and #3 is MIT. That's a strategy. They're comparing themselves to Stanford and MIT. You can't see it, but basically I'm having a hard time keeping a straight face. Are you about price? So you're like Target. Are you a product class? Again, this is about, are you the car, are you the driver, or are you the race? And so in the race, 7-Up says we're the uncola. We're not like all the other cola drinks, even though they're all sodas. And so in terms of data, the way I can come up with my positioning is I either use anecdotal data or I collect targeted data. Anecdotal data is I just go in there, have a conversation, and then based on the entire flavor of what I get, then, and the thing about anecdotal data is it can build on itself. You can keep changing the questions. Or I can actually collect data, do surveys, and do hard analysis. And from that, I can come up with a position, figure out what space that I want to occupy. Now, what do I mean about all this space and everything else? Well, what I'm really talking about is, if you remember the perceptual maps, what do we have? We have 2 variables. What if I have 15 variables? What if I have 20 variables? And that's what I mean in space. So now I've got 20 axes. And so relative to all that, where am I going to sit? And those 20 axes could either be product features or they could actually be competitors. You choose how you want to position yourself. And in the next lecture, we'll go over the different mapping techniques.